Welcome to Bulletproof Veteran Podcast. Thank you for your service.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Bulletproof Veteran Podcast. It's our first interview of 2022, and we are starting off with a lot of information for you. So grab onto your sides of your chairs, get ready, and just enjoy everything that we're going to be putting out today for you. And the reason I'm excited about this is we've had small business owners before. We've had veteran small business owners, men, women, get out of the military. They try different things, and they end up owning their own business. Some people think that it's a very difficult thing to do. It takes capital. It takes a lot of drive. It takes a certain type of personality to own your own business. I don't want anybody to think that that's not true. Not everybody should just go out and own a business. But I think that veterans are prepared for that. And I think we're the perfect people to own small businesses in a lot of circumstances. What we have on the show for you today is just another avenue for you to take advantage of, and that's franchises. I think when we hear that, we think of McDonald's, we think of Wendy's, we think of, I need $500,000 to start my franchise. Well, that might not be the case. So today we have on the show Benjamin Burt, okay? He is a Special Forces veteran. He was Special Forces medic. He was at the schoolhouse there at Fort Bragg. So he's been all over. And when he got out of the military, he started a franchise called Fibrenew. It's a vinyl, leather, plastic restoration. So think of your vinyl couch, leather couches, vinyl chairs, that type of stuff. And he's going to talk to us all about what it takes to start a franchise. So Ben, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jason. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a really cool topic. And like I said, I'm excited about this because it's something we really haven't talked about on the show. And I think that so many people maybe kind of get it wrong when it comes to what they need to do to start a franchise, and that it really is an attainable goal if it's something you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And and I was probably the same way. I really had no clue about franchising, and it was not something that had really been on my radar much prior to getting ready to transition. But as I started to come up transitioning, I had a degree in medicine. So when our family decided to stay here around the Fayetteville, Fort Bragg area, and I decided to pivot into business, I didn't know a whole lot about how to start a business or any of that. So rather than kind of reinvent the wheel on that, a lot of my friends who were into business and had done that traditional, hey, I got out and got their MBA from UNC. They recommended for me to try and look into franchising. So while I was up in through the VA and the vocational rehab counselors, they kind of linked me in with franchising opportunities for veterans, which is an organization that basically screens franchises for veterans and picks the top 300-400 in the country. And they assign you a coach, and the coach interviews you, finds out what your interests are, and finds out more about you and what's going to make you happy. And then, unbeknownst to me, that there is literally, if you can think of a business model out there, and like you said, any of them are smaller scale of the restaurants and food chains like that, but there are so many franchises out there that deal with that can be run out of the house. And for me, what was important to me was I wanted to be able to control my schedule. I really kind of like the idea of working for myself. I like working with my hands, and wanted something with low startup costs because as I was transitioning, I had a lot of angst about, finances, how I'm going to pay the bills and everything like that. So I didn't want to go into, a massive amount of debt in order to do that. So, so the franchise coach linked me in with about 3 or 4 different franchises after interviewing me. And I started to research and dig into their business models and, steep learning curve on how to assess businesses and how to look at the business models. And the nice thing about the business model, essentially, that's an op order. And you basically have that freedom to take that op order and go forth and execute it. So, it's something I could kind of wrap my head around.
Yeah. Then that's why I say that a lot of veterans can be successful at this, because the business world is very similar to a tactical world. You have to think that way and execute a mission. And I think that's why so many of us fit into some type of a business model, like you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they give you the framework, and so the franchise that I ended up going with, Fibrenew, as you mentioned, it was something that I could run out of the house, had complete autonomy, core job, coaching, mentoring, and teaching you. It's a great it's like a team atmosphere again, and I really enjoyed. That was something else that as I was going through the validation and franchise owner process, and I was doing that with two other franchises as well. Fibrenew started to come up to the top because they really support that team atmosphere. The business model that they work you through how to select your territory, how to do market research in your area, how to really delve into the numbers to see, they want you to be successful. So even someone with no business experience like myself was able to, grasp the concept and start the business. And I all in, and they do veterans, they're very veteran oriented. So they had a discount for the upfront franchising fee. So it was 42,000 for that. And then they want you to have about 35,000 startup capital to start, to buy the additional equipment, things like that you're going to need and to run the business for the first few months. They waive their franchising fee for the first 6 months. So to kind of get yourself off the feet, so you don't have a huge overhead as you're starting the business. So for me, it was really a dream come true. I picked the right, I have no regrets. I picked the right franchise, and there's other franchises out there. I mean, I enjoy, even though I'd never done leather, vinyl, and plastic restoration, it was nowhere on my radar. I enjoy the fact that I can go in and help people fix something. I'm a tinkerer, so I enjoy fixing something, making it look better, and you get that immediate feedback too. I'm usually a typical job. I'm in and out in 2 to 3 hours, and I make something that was kind of tore up. I make it look a lot better, make the customer happy, and the margins for us are pretty good. I'm able to pay the bills and had that anxiety of like, geez, how am I going to make it work now? What am I going to do next?
Just be honest. You just want to continue with that trauma stuff. It's the same as stitching up a purse and stitching up a couch. It's exactly the same. Everything is, you're perfectly
So
fine.
yeah, actually that was part of it too. Yeah, when you're sewing up, repairing seams or tears in leather and vinyl, it is almost like suturing. So
So you worked with, see, that medical thing just comes right back in.
yeah, it clicked. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Plugging holes. I can do that. Yeah.
I can do that, man. I could take an ID card and I'll tape 3 sides of it down and walk out of their house. They might be a little weirded out by that if you do that. But no, and it's all about finding that fit. I think with anything, any job, it doesn't really make a difference if you're going to be a business owner, franchisee, if you're going to be, just an employee at a company. You have to find your fit where going to work every day is not like, I want to pull my hair out because I hate this. And like you said, not having that huge overhead of like, hey, I'm going to start a deli. Well, I'm going to start from the ground up where I'm going to have rent and I'm going to have employees and I got to watch the cash register and I got to pay the deli guy and the drink guy and all of these different things. And you have to keep everything stocked. That's a huge overhead. It's a huge undertaking. And if you're new to business, that could be a little scary. Something like what you're talking about, you're under $100,000 startup with the franchise fee and the capital that they want on hand. And if I'm not mistaken, you started just on your own. You had no employees at that time, correct?
Yeah, correct. Because I was unfortunately I was doing this process in the middle of COVID.
Oh, joy.
So yeah. I kind of started looking into this process in the fall of 19, and so by the spring of 20, I was ready to pull the trigger. I started terminal leave in July of 20, and we did our hard opening on the business 1 May. Wow. So it was, and so my thought was, and that kind of what separated Fibrenew from the pack was that business model was recession resistant. It was COVID resistant because we cover so many industries. When we cover automotive, furniture, aviation, RVs, boats, medical equipment, vinyl siding, and vinyl windows. So between all of those different industries, and I was going through the validation process, that was foremost on my mind. Like, well, one, we're having a hard time. Any business is having a hard time hiring people, and it's
Of
still
course.
true now. I mean, we're a year down the road, and I'm having a hard time finding techs, but I can generate revenue by myself. It's a concierge service, so I do most of the work on site at folks' driveway, in their house, things like that. And we could bounce, when one industry's lagging because of COVID or because of the recession, I can bounce to other industries, and it picks up the slack. So that was another thing that was foremost on my mind. Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely want to have something that's recession proof. COVID proof. I don't think anybody was ready for any of that. So I try not to say, hey, like something, because pandemic's a pandemic. You can't. You're never going to plan for that. I mean, nobody was ready for that.
You can't see it. You don't necessarily see it coming. And once that freight train starts heading towards you, I mean, what do you do? Where are you going to get out of the way?
Right. But there is something to recession proof. There are industries that work. You'll take a hit, but you're not going to go under. My father, who owned a construction company, he always talked about that because he went through, the early '90s recession. He went through, the housing collapse in the 2000s. He worked, in the mid '80s when things were a little, it was good, and then it got a little dicey. So he went through it. And one thing that he said is he always tried to position the business that during those times, he would work for schools. Hey, they need new desks, they need new cabinets in an office somewhere, because the schools were always spending money. They didn't react the same way to the recessions. They had a budget, they had things that were voted on, and they would spend that money whether people were out of work or not, because that money was already coming. So like he would switch from residential to commercial when it was advantageous. So like there is something to positioning yourself in a way that you can deal with what the economy is going to kind of throw at you.
Yeah. And that would be something I'd recommend to any veteran that's looking to get into business. I mean, think about, and this is something we always do, like, hey, what's the worst case scenario? Plan for the worst case scenario, and then you're ready for everything else.
Yeah, definitely. Now, when we talk about franchises,
and with this model, I mean, I was saying, with this particular model, I mean, we say, we can repair and restore something for probably about a third replacement costs most times. So as the recession comes in and pockets the budget tighter for individual families and stuff like that, we can help them stretch what they currently have useful life out longer. And then with the business aspect, that's another big bonus, because like a restaurant, if they need to, if they have to recover 20 booths, that's going to be $20,000-$30,000 for them potentially. And I can come in there for, 4 or 5 and repair almost 90% of them. So
I could definitely see where the RV thing would come into play over this past year. I know so many people that bought used RVs because they couldn't go on vacation. So they took the vacation money, bought used RVs, fixed them up, and then that's what they were taking their families and doing the RV camper type thing. And vinyl, leather, and fabric repair, whether it's a pop-up or, it just has couches and stuff inside of it, is huge when you're trying to make that look nice for the wife and everybody to go in and have a good time camping. So
yeah, and then linoleum floors,
I even forgot about that.
A lot of work on because the slide outs, if it's not perfectly level, a lot of times debris will get caught up under there too, and that's probably what we do the most work on the RVs for, is just the linoleum flooring. Yeah,
they drag as the slide out goes out and tears the linoleum. I could see that, definitely. Actually, I think I have a tear in my linoleum in mine from that. But
we probably got a franchise around.
I was going to say, I'm going to have to look somebody up somewhere. So when we talk about the franchise, I think a lot of people kind of don't understand how you get into a franchise. And you went over a little bit about some of the benefits of being a transitioning military member and a veteran, some of the assistance that you got. Now, you talk about this franchise fee. I think people throw that term around, but I don't think everybody understands what it is. And I'm sure it varies from business to business. I mean, I'm sure a franchise fee for a McDonald's is going to be different than Fibrenew, which is going to be different, say, a Snap-on truck. Everything is going to it's going to come with different things, and they're going to require different things. But if you could briefly tell me a little bit about what a franchise fee is.
Sure. Yeah. And almost all your franchises are going to have an upfront cost to get in and purchase the franchise and the licensing, and the support. Basically, you're paying for the support you get from corporate, and then every month you have a fee, basically it's basically a licensing fee, and however they frame it, but it's for the support from corporate and the licensing to continue to do business under that franchising name. So a lot of them will do percentages, anywhere from 6 to 10% of your gross revenue per jobs. And Fibrenew, that's another thing that appealed to me, is they have a fixed fee. It doesn't fluctuate. So the more business I do, it's not a higher fee for me. So they do a flat, it's $6.95 for the first, I think, 2 or 3 years. Then it's rated to go up, 2 or 3% every few years to keep up with inflation, stuff like that. But generally, so roughly $700 for me. And Fibrenew, that's a very low. I can do that. I can basically do that in 2-3 jobs. That franchise fees paid per month.
Yeah.
So that's been, that's something that you want to factor into it, because some franchises, especially if you're not working through like an honest broker like I was with franchising opportunities for veterans, they screen all that. So they're not going to let those franchising models in that are taking advantage of the person, where it's almost like a pyramid scheme, where you're working as an independent contractor or an independent franchise, but you're giving up 25% of your revenue to corporate. They're not going to let those kind of franchises in.
Yeah. So that's why I'm kind of interested in talking to you about like this process, because I think there are probably a lot of pitfalls in the beginning. Like, did you have to consult with? You had the broker, but did you consult with like a lawyer or anything? I have a lawyer. You create an LLC, stuff like that. Did you have to do a lot of that, or does that work kind of with the broker and the franchise?
Realistically, I could have done it without a lawyer, but okay. I wanted that warm up. And my franchising coach from veterans, they recommended that I have a lawyer look over the franchising agreement. And I would absolutely, even if you have a good feeling about, as I did with Fibrenew, and then the lawyer even told me, like, hey, there's no red flags in this franchising agreement. And the nice thing about the lawyer as well is they broke down the franchising agreement. Like, he gave me a 10-page interpretation of the franchising agreement for dummies.
Almost like an executive summary type thing.
Exactly. And he gave me bullet points of what this franchising agreement says you're responsible for. This is what corporate's responsible for to you. And he broke it down into bullet points as well, which, when you're going through a 20 or 30 page document like that, is very helpful.
Yeah, definitely. And if you don't understand lawyer speak and stuff like that, which none of us do, the word may versus the word shall versus the word, all these different words mean something very specific. So you have to be very careful. And if you have something like that and somebody that'll kind of weed through it and be like, hey, this is what you really need to worry about, and this is what we got, you're good to go.
Yeah. And essentially that, that startup capital that Fibrenew wanted us to have, that 35,000, some of that was, and I said I had to intentionally set some of that aside to pay for, the lawyer, accountant, getting an accounting firm up. And I found an accounting firm that can do both my taxes, which, I have to submit sales and use tax withholdings every month. And they do the bookkeeping for me as well. So as I start to expand out and hire a couple of full-time techs and get them trained and expand the business, that accountant can expand with me and do bookkeeping for me and all that. So the more the areas where my time is valuable, I can hire, basically support out for that. And that's something that, as an independent owner, and right now currently a one-man show, it's very important for me to have that kind of support. And Fibrenew as well. They give you the customer relations software. They use Jobber. And for somebody who's a tech retard like me, they they have a tech basically, walk me through how to set it up, and walk me through how to structure it for my franchise, specifically for my franchise. So all that was very helpful. QuickBooks, the same thing.
That's great. Yeah, because a lot of that stuff, depending on what your background is, can be a completely foreign language for you. I mean,
Oh yeah,
you know, even the lawyer and the accountant. I mean, that's if you're starting a business or you win the lottery, the first phone calls you make are to your lawyer and accountant. Either one of those. If you're starting a business or you win the lottery, let me give you some advice, folks. Call a lawyer and an accountant and have that, because Uncle Sam's going to want their money. And the quickest way to sink a business is to not pay him properly. All right. If you mess up your taxes, you are not going to last. And if you start entering into contracts with people without understanding what you're signing, bad, very, very bad. And it's a quick way to tank any business or venture that you might be going on. Even if you're doing nonprofits and stuff like that, you still want to talk to those people. It's the best advice you can get, for sure. But so you start the franchise. Okay. So you do your franchise fee, you have your 35,000 capital, you show that, you prove it out, the whole deal. You, like you said, you got support from Fibrenew, but you also get the right to put their logo, that type of stuff. So that's more the licensing fee that you're talking about. That's a month-to-month type thing.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
okay.
That's part of it. Yeah. But that also covered so my monthly franchising fee, they have a corporate deal with Jobber. So my customer relations software, all that stuff's paid for through that.
Okay. So that's part of that as well.
Yeah, that's part of that as well. And Fibrenew has a great system. I mean, I can call back to my instructors that when I went through the tech course for them, learning how to repair vinyl and linoleum floors and all this stuff. I can reach back to them at any time, and often, at least probably once a month, I still do that. On certain jobs that I haven't seen before, something's quirky, I can call them up. We have a very good social media platform for corporate where I can reach out to other franchise owners and ask if they've seen anything like this. How would they bid this job? How did they repair certain items that are kind of all one-offs that we don't see very often? So, I mean, the support out there is just awesome.
That's very cool. I know that sometimes with like Snap-on trucks, I've known some guys that have owned some Snap-on franchises, and their ability to reach out to their technical teams when there's questions about a tool, or, hey, my tool's not working properly, can you help me, blah, blah, blah. I got this. What tool should I be using for this? They have, a team that they can call and get that information. So that's huge, because you don't want to look like a dummy in front of the customer. You'd rather look like a dummy on the phone asking the question, and they're used to it. You know what I mean? You're asking the questions.
Yeah.
That's what they're there for. It's kind of like an inspection in the military. You never say, I don't know. You say, let me find out that answer for you. You never say you don't know. You just want to be able to go get the answer for them and know where to look. So call your team or whatever the case may be. So that's very cool. Now, did you have any pitfalls in the beginning that some mistakes that you might have made when you were first starting up? And I know with COVID, there was probably a lot of things that I wouldn't even call them mistakes, but things you obviously weren't anticipating. But were there things that you would tell somebody else that might be starting up, hey, watch out for this, I made this mistake?
I mean, the biggest thing that I don't know if it was a mistake, but it was something that my coach had mentioned to me, and I was very glad I followed that advice, was knowing what my overhead is, and meticulously tracking, because, from day one I was busy, but, those first couple of months, had I not been tracking my expenses and my overhead, I'd have been thinking like, oh, I'm making all this money, but, I'm not really netting that kind of money. So keeping track of your expenses and your overhead, and just being conscious of, what your fixed and variables are looking like, especially your variables, because those, are going to fluctuate from month to month. So if you're not paying attention to that stuff, you think you're doing really well, and then at the end of the month, you look at the bank account for the business, and you're like, I thought I was doing way better than that. So that's something that, I mean, I could have easily fallen into that trap, and unfortunately, my franchise coach kind of forewarned me on that. So, and Fibrenew's pretty good about that too. I mean, they do, we do monthly Zoom meetings on business development and, track things like this, how to do marketing, how to reach out to different industries, and get in with, like in the medical market, how to approach a hospital and or large urgent care clinic, and who to talk to in that structure, and how that corporate structure is set up to become a certified vendor for them and things like that. So the other thing that warranty companies. So we do a lot of work with warranty companies for both automotive, some furniture, and RVs for sure. So understanding what paperwork needs to be done for them, W-9s and things like that. So learning through that stuff. So those are just understand the administrative side, because that's the biggest, I guess, in a broader spectrum. You don't understand your admin side, your operational side. That's what everybody focuses on, and I'm just guilty of that too. But if you don't have that good split of time that you're dedicating to the admin side and making sure your systems are in place, just like any good staff. I mean, if your systems are junk and you don't have any continuity there, or it's sloppy, your product at the end, no matter how good your operations are going to be, it's going to be a lackluster product.
Yeah. And that's going back to what I said when we first started talking, is that it takes a special type of individual to be a business owner, especially small business owner, where you might have only 1 or 2 employees. You feel like you need to jump into the operation all the time because it's yours, it's your baby, and you have to work through it. But if you're
doing
that's
what you can relate to quickly, right?
Of course. And not to mention, a lot of customers, they want to see the owner every day. That's why they call a small business instead of one of the big chains or something like that. They want to see the owner's face and know that that's the guy who's taking care of it, the man or woman who's going to, have the ultimate authority to make a decision and get the job done. Now, if you're doing that at the cost of your admin side, that could be a recipe for failure. That's why you really need that structure and that balance. And listen, that's not for everybody. I know I would never be a good small business owner. I'm very good at my job. I love my job. I would never be a good small business owner. Like my father, excellent, handles it well, works with my mom. My mom did all the bookkeeping. My dad did the customer relation and the actual construction. They were a great team. I could never do it because I'm too scatterbrained. I'd be all over the place. I would get hyper-focused on a job and forget to pay 3 bills. It's not for me. I'll be the first to admit it. But I think a lot of veterans can do this. I mean, I think it's a great opportunity for people. And like you said, if you can get in at under $100,000 for some of these franchises that are already established, and they're going to help you understand your market, that's huge. Because like, I'm sure they worked with you, and I don't know the specifics, but the Fayetteville area, there's other leather and vinyl repair guys, I'm sure. And that's competition. Did they help you try to understand like how to position yourself so that you could be a step above the competition, or how to work with the competition, or whatever the case may be?
Yeah, and that was actually probably one of the key things is they do a lot of that support, like through Google. They'll help you set up your Google ads. Corporate helps run all of that stuff as far as the social media marketing. They get our names out there through a lot of different social media platforms and things like that to generate those hits. So yeah, that's part of what corporate does for that. How Fibrenew earns that franchising fee is like anytime someone Googles leather, vinyl, plastic repair, restoration in my area, I'm the number 1 or 2 name that pops up there, and that's all. I have no idea how that's like chicken bones and magic to me. But they take care of all that stuff for me, because that was something that, and again, like you mentioned, as a business owner, you got to understand what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. And if it's a weakness, then seriously look at subbing that out, like bookkeeping and all that stuff. I can do it, but it's not a strong suit of mine, and not something I really want to spend a whole lot of my time on. So the QuickBooks and my customer relations software syncs in with QuickBooks. So basically, as I'm going through an invoicing, a lot of that backside stuff, once I got the systems in place and the software and everything synced in, which they helped me do, a lot of that stuff's taken care of for me.
Yeah.
So I don't have to deal with it. And then my accountant basically has access to my QuickBooks, and they're doing all that stuff, in the background, without me having to spend a lot of time on it. Same thing for the social media stuff and the online marketing. Corporate does a lot of that stuff for me because I had no background in that, and it was not something I would do well. So I was fortunate enough to have, that was one of the factors I looked at with Fibrenew is they're going to do all that stuff for me to help me be successful, and I don't have to spend a lot of time doing it.
Yeah. And I think that search engine optimization stuff where you click and you're the first one that comes up, people kind of forget about how important that is nowadays versus
60% of my business is from that. Yeah.
And there's a statistic that if you're not one of the top 3 on a Google page, your clicks go down by like 75% at that point. If you're not one of those top 3 on the top of the page, most of the time, and if you actually think about it, and I challenge everybody out there to kind of do this, search for something, could be anything, all right? And see if you make it past the 3rd one before you click on that other one. And most of the time you won't. You will click on the top one or the second one. That's usually how it works. And it's really important if you're in a saturated market where there's a lot of competition and stuff, you want to make sure you're at the top and get that first click every single time. And if you don't know how to do that, that might be a big factor in who you choose to go franchise with if they're going to offer that. That's big.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Because there's whole social media teams. You can hire a whole social media team now just for that aspect. I'm horrible at social media. I suck at it. I know I do. I know I could probably grow so much more if I knew how to do that. But I'm like, yeah, well, I'll put up a post. Yay, I did a good job.
Stayed away from social media as part of the job.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. You technically did,
yeah.
right?
So, I mean, and I never had a Facebook. I mean, my wife had one, but there was certain protocols that when I was in group that they outlined for the wives on how to structure their social media stuff to protect us. And so I had no, I mean, my first social media account was as I was transitioning my book rehab counselor helped me set up a LinkedIn account. So I was like, oh, wow, this is how this works.
Yeah.
So yeah, for a lot of us, we're not familiar with that. So that may be something that if you're not familiar with it or it's very uncomfortable for you, strongly look at getting support for that because it is a big part of like your marketing plan.
Yeah. And now as we kind of like, see how everything develops and now, okay, you've paid your franchise fee, you've gotten set up, they're helping you with the search engine optimization, they're helping you with the social media, you got your truck, you got your, whatever you need, your supplies that you need to do. When you start looking at expanding your franchise, what are some of your goals and how you're attacking those goals for, expanding now? Hopefully the COVID we're hoping to be on a little bit of the downside of it and you have that opportunity. What are some of the challenges and what are some of the things that you're trying to do to take your business to the next level?
Yeah. So when I started the business and I started my business plan, I had a three-year plan and a 5-year plan, basically goals, long-range goals is a good way of putting it. But by my 3rd year, I wanted to have at least one fully trained tech on board with a untrained tech as well. By year 5, I went 2 fully trained techs and an office manager to do some of the admin side, so I can run the business, part-time at that point. Because I'm looking at, I based everything off of my kids. So my youngest will be starting. He'll be in his junior year of high school in 5 years. So as he's starting to start the college prep stuff, just like my oldest will be doing here in a couple of years, I wanted to be able to start shifting my time away from the business, if at least give me the option to. So and then at some point, based on my market research for my area, and my office manager and 2 full-time techs can run this area. This market will probably support 3 full-time techs if I really get into those business-to-business accounts. But that's what my goal was at 5 years, was if I want to move on to another income stream, start another business, or just spend time with the family focusing on that solely, I'll have that ability to do that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great goal. And like you said, using something else in your life as kind of a timeline for those goals is a good way to go about it, because it's something exterior to the business that you can kind of, use as a little bit of a guide, because the business
Mhm.
is going to fluctuate. And if you allow it to run you and you don't run it, it's a problem. So that's definitely a
Yeah.
good way of going about it. Definitely a good way to go about it. So for somebody that might be looking to get into this, all right, so they've listened to us, we've chatted about it. What are some of the resources? You've spoken a lot about the broker. Okay, that was there in
Yeah.
North Carolina. You had that, which sounds like a really good way to go
Well,
about it.
they're nationwide. Yeah. Franchising opportunities for veterans.
Mhm.
It's an organization. They're tied in with VA as well.
Yep, yep.
But yeah, you can Google them, and it's basically completely free of charge. They're just a coach and a mentor. They do get some compensation from the franchise on the back end, so you
Mhm.
understand. They do get paid, but it's by the franchise. They're basically, for lack of a better term, a headhunter
Okay,
for them. But their focus is primarily to support the veterans.
okay.
Um, so
So you
it's
think that's
I would
probably a
highly
primary?
recommend that.
Yeah. So you think
Yeah,
that's
I
the primary
absolutely
way
would.
to
Yeah,
start?
I would. Yeah, because there's so many franchises out there that are not good business models,
Hmm.
that if you can have somebody who actually already knows that industry and can kind of screen those folks out, and focus on franchises that fit your interests and goals, and your values. Like, that was the biggest thing I took away from the transitioning classes and the vocational rehab stuff, was first understanding what my values were. And we say, oh, honor, integrity, duty, God, and country, right?
Hmm.
But I mean, there's a lot more that goes into that. And so for me, my values were, at this stage of my life, especially, primarily, family, um, quality time with them, being control of my schedule, things that I was looking for, to get out of that business. That had I not understood that before I started searching, it would have made a lot of those decisions on which franchise to go with, and which business model to go with, much harder. But because I knew that stuff up front, and I'd kind of done that legwork to kind of figure out what was going to make me happy, that made my decisions, that much more easy to make as I went
Yeah.
through that process.
Well, and I think that's important because you're tied to that.
Ooh.
You're tied to that organization. You're tied to that corporate, um, you know, look. Chick-fil-A has a social media following. You know what I mean? So the things that they do at their corporate, even though you have individual franchisees, you're kind of tied to that. You're tied to what they have going on in the news. You're tied to all that stuff. You're also tied to their success. You look at a couple of my buddies back in the day when I first got out of the military. They were looking at Quiznos. Quiznos were everywhere. I mean, you
Mhm.
couldn't throw a rock and not hit a Quiznos. And then all of a sudden, they were just gone. I mean, they just disappeared. And I know there was a lot of stuff that went on in the background that I don't know everything. But if you tie yourself to an organization that doesn't have the longevity, or is in trouble, well, then you're going to be in trouble, because once they go away, now your franchise is gone. So you have to kind of look at that and look at how long have they been around? How have they done over the years? You want to do your
Yeah.
research and work with the broker together and come up with the most successful plan for you, tied to your values, that you can. I mean, I think that's really important that we kind of stress that. You're part of that group at that point. I mean, you seem very happy with Fibrenew. I'm assuming.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So
No,
that's great.
and that was something else. Yeah, some of a couple of the franchises I looked at just didn't get warm and fuzzy from their corporate folks.
Mhm.
It wasn't a team atmosphere. It was kind of like, you'll sink or swim regardless of what we do. But Fibrenew came in and said, hey, we want you to be successful. We are going to provide you all the tools and training and mentorship that you need to be successful, but you have complete control of your, franchise. So essentially, I could focus in on a couple of the industries. I could focus in on all of them. I can, nobody tells me what jobs I have to take and don't and can't take. So I mean, I like that flexibility. I like that support, and that flexibility. And every franchise owner I talk to is part of the validation process. And that's the case with a lot of franchises. You'll go through a validation process. Part of their validation process is talking to, they want you to talk to at least 15 other franchise owners, and you can pick, like, out of there's 300 now in the US and another 60 or so up in Canada. And then you can talk to any one of them and call them up and say, hey, what's been your experience and stuff like that. Everyone that I talked to was absolutely supportive of, hey, if you have any questions or need any help whatsoever, just give me a call anytime, email me. Every one of them was forthcoming with information. They get the good, the bad, and ugly, very upfront. So, that really gave me that. It's not a competition between franchise owners for Fibrenew. It's everybody wants everybody else to succeed, and everybody's working towards a common goal. So, coming from the Army, that was very relatable to me, that kind of team atmosphere. And I really, that really spoke to me.
Yeah. And
so find an organization that does that for you too.
Yeah, you want to get that warm and fuzzy. You want to get that warm and fuzzy that
Yeah.
you're going into, because even though we say, hey, you could do this for not as much money as starting, maybe a brick and mortar business or something like that, $100,000 is still a tremendous amount of money. And if you're transitioning out of the military after a single enlistment, or maybe, even if you did 20 years, you're only going to be 38, 39. You might be in your early 20s. $100,000 is a lot of money. If you're just getting out, you got to figure out house, you got to figure out cars, you got to figure out a lot of things. This is not something you want to enter into lightly. You want to vet what you're going to do so that you're as successful as possible. And I think that's a great way to do it, is talking to other franchise owners. And, it's not bad if they have a bad thing to say about the organization, as long as the good outweighs any of the bad that they have. That's just them being honest. So I would say getting in touch with this broker for our veterans, getting in touch with this broker would probably be the number one thing that I'm taking away so far from the conversation. If you're still in the military and you're getting ready to transition out, or if you're a veteran looking to kind of change up what you got going on, getting in touch with the broker will set you above and beyond everybody else. How do they go about doing that? You said they have a website that you can go to for the for the broker?
You can basically just Google franchising opportunities for veterans, or you can go through your local VA. If your local VA has a vocational rehab counselor, I would guarantee almost all of those are familiar with that organization, and can kind of connect you in with those folks.
All right.
And I have, my coach, anybody can email me and I can send them my coach's information. She was phenomenal. She's up in Virginia, but she deals with, clients all over the country. So and I've talked to 2 or 3 other the coaches for them too. And they're just, that organization is phenomenal.
Yeah, it seems like an amazing resource to get out on the right foot. And like you said, make sure you kind of filter out the ones that are more pyramid schemes, scams, or just bad models to be, even if they're not one of those things, they're just a bad model. It's not going to work for you.
And that's something that, wherever you're trying to set up your business, just doing some basic market research, and it's not something that anybody that's kind of dealt with basic intelligence in the Army can figure out. Okay, who's my competition in my area, and how can I find my niche in that market? So, and that was very helpful for me, because I knew going in, and fortunately my research was accurate, that in my area, the way the Fibrenew model was set up, nobody does everything that we do. And so I immediately came in and grabbed lion's share of the market share in pretty much 5 out of my 6 industries.
Yeah. Well, that's like up here. You want to know New York, okay, maybe opening a Papa John's when there's 3 local pizza joints that everybody loves. Maybe not the best idea here, but maybe in Delaware, that Papa John's is going to do awesome, where there's not that many local pizza joints, and nobody cares that it's a chain. Up here, you say chain pizza joint, and you're getting dirty looks and somebody's getting ready to stab you. The mom and pop is going to do a lot better. So understanding kind of those dynamics and understanding where you're going to actually operate is huge. It's huge because some places, some things are going to work and others aren't. And that's the way business works. So
Yeah.
I definitely agree with you that doing your research ahead of time, getting in touch with the broker, and understanding those upfront fees and kind of your strengths and what you're bringing to that business will lead to a successful launch of a franchise. If you do all those things, you're setting yourself up for probably the most success that you could possibly have.
Yeah. And another great resource out there too is the Commit Foundation.
Okay.
They support veterans. They also do like business mentorship too. They'll assign you a business mentor who's they even, and a lot of times they can go industry specific. So now for my industry, there wasn't a coach here locally that dealt with my industry specific, but I mean, they're a great resource too. They have classes out there to kind of teach you how to do market research if you're really not comfortable with it. The business mentors can kind of walk the dog with you on a lot of how to set up that business model, interpreting a business model, how to put together that business plan. So yeah, the Commit Foundation is another great veteran source as well.
Very cool. Very cool. That's a good thing to kind of add in here to kind of cap everything off, to make sure everybody gets to the right places and gets the right information. Now you said that you wouldn't mind if people kind of contacted you. What's the best way to get in contact with you if people had specific questions, especially about Fibrenew? If hey, listen,
Yeah.
if this set off and you really, if this is something you're really interested in, how can they get in touch with you?
Sure. Yeah, my business email is Fayetteville, FAYETTEVILLE at fibrenew.com, FIBRENEW.com. They can also reach out and give me a call. I'm area code 910-527-5057. So either one of those are good contact information for me. If you're curious about Fibrenew, you can just look us up on fibrenew.com. I'm specifically fibrenew.com/Fayetteville, but you can look at all the different business models. They have the company history on there. It goes all the way back to 83. It started off in Canada. So, I mean, it's been around for a while. And that's the kind of research you want to do when you're looking at franchises is just get on the website and start looking at, well, how do they set up their social media platforms? How do they set up their websites? It's a good way of just doing a quick overview research on a company.
Yeah. Yeah. If the website's janky looking and if the social media is not good, you might want to, click somewhere else and check it out, because this day and age, if that's not on point, it's already a knock against you. So it's kind of tough. Fibrenew
is awesome about that. I mean, our president, Jesse Johnstone, he has an IT background, so he's very adamant about that stuff. And again, going back to that team atmosphere we were talking about before, I mean, he's even called me a couple times as well, the company president. And I get calls from, the support staff, just checking in and helping out, as well as the Zoom meetings and stuff like that. So if you can find a business in an atmosphere like that, where top to bottom, they level the communications and are there to help support you, that, to me, that was an ideal situation. And that's an organization I want to be a part of.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And again, it'll be even easier for you transitioning out of the military into something like this if it does have that kind of atmosphere that you can relate to and you feel comfortable in. If it's a complete shock to the system, it makes it a little more difficult.
Yeah.
Well, Ben, I appreciate you sitting down with me. I've had a blast talking to you. I want to give you one last opportunity. Anything you want to say, any advice you might have out there for anybody starting out, please, the floor is yours.
No, yeah. I mean, I'd go back and just stress again, like, understand what your values are. What's going to motivate you to get out of bed every day and work hard to get that business up and running, and just to be successful in life, period. That was something that, I'd gone through the Army for, 26 years and had never really codified what my values were. And some of those exercises that the vocational rehab folks did for me kind of really got my head and my thought processes lined up to really make some more intelligent decisions as I was going into this business, because it's the big unknown, right? So the more you know about yourself and have that codified, the easier those decisions are to make. What's the right move for you.
Very good. I mean, that's good advice all around. That's forget
Yeah.
just the franchise and all that. That's just good advice I think for everybody. Ben, thank you again. Like I said, I really appreciate it. It's a great way to start the new year for everybody out there who maybe is looking for a little change. Maybe you're underemployed. Maybe you're unemployed right now, or maybe you're transitioning out of the military. If you're looking for a way to, kind of set yourself up for the future, this might be it, and this might be for you. So I hope everybody got a lot out of it. And again, Ben, I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Jason. Thanks so much for the opportunity.